This week on This is the Wayseekers, the hosts are taking a class all about Grand Admiral Thrawn. That's right, we're introducing a brand new series on the podcast called Star Wars for Dummies, where an expert comes on and explains Star Wars lore to us.
Apparently so.
Today we're starting with the canon story of Grand Admiral Thrawn all throughout his 6 canon novels, tied together neatly with a PowerPoint presentation.
We're excited to learn.
Our guest this week is MJ, aka Chimera Chat, who many recognize as the #1 Thrawn fan, including official Star Wars. What are Thrawn's motivations? Is Thrawn even a bad guy? Our expert MJ has us covered with all of those questions, so come with me and embark on another episode of This is the Way Seekers. This is Wayseekers University right here. Thrawn 101. We're learning today all about Grand Admiral Thrawn. Super excited to do this episode because we're introducing a new series to the podcast. This is the Wayseekers, called Star Wars for Dummies, where us 3 co-hosts, Scotty, Chelsea, and I, the dummies, are going to be explained Star Wars by Star Wars experts. Little niche things here and there, like, maybe we'll do an episode about the Old Republic, the High Republic, but today it's all about Grand Admiral Thrawn, and we have a wonderful Grand Admiral Thrawn expert, someone who's dedicated her entire social media presence to Grand Admiral Thrawn and Lars Mikkelsen and Timothy Zahn and everybody associated with Grand Admiral Thrawn. MJ herself, Thrawn's PR manager, Chimera Chat. MJ, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking, and thank you for having me. I'm so excited to teach everyone about my favorite blue boy.
And we're excited to learn. Or I think I speak for everybody
Yes.
when I say we're excited to learn.
Yeah, I'm super excited. We're talking about Canon Grand Admiral Thrawn. I want to make that clear because Grand Admiral Thrawn is a character from Legends and Canon. He's an old motherfucker. He's been around for a long time. But we are just talking about the canon books, which started coming out in 2017. Look at me knowing my Thrawn information before we already get into class. But as always, I'm joined by my wonderful 2 co-hosts, Chelsea and Scotty. Scotty, how much do you know about Grand Admiral Thrawn? Can you tell me what you know, like the little information that you know, and have you read any of the books?
I wanted to say this, but I wanted to let you finish. So when you said he's an old man, like from what I read about the Chiss, he ain't got much time left either. So he's only got like 10 years of life left because they only live to like 80.
Source?
Probably Wikipedia. But I haven't read any of the Thrawn books because I didn't start reading until last year. I didn't know how. And I know Thrawn has like a little boyfriend in the Empire. That's Eli Vanto. I couldn't tell you what Eli Vanto does. Do I know anything else? Oh, Thrawn knows Anakin and knows that Vader and Anakin are one, and that's like the bulk of my knowledge, honestly.
Honestly, same. I'm in the same exact boat as you. I just know things because, like, I'm friends with a lot of people from the famous, infamous Chiss Twitter, depending on your perspective. That's how I met MJ, or that's why I know MJ from, because she has a very prominent role in Chiss Twitter. So that's why
A founding member, if you will.
A founding member. Okay. I like that. Chelsea, how much do you know about Grand Admiral Thrawn and the canon universe?
Yeah, so I have read all of the canon novels, the Empire Trilogy and the Ascendancy, and I love them, but I have a terrible memory where I'm terrible with names, and if you know anything about the Chiss, you know they have, even with their abbreviations, sometimes those names, they're a little rough, so I have a feeling I'm gonna have like that pointing at the screen moment, this entire thing where I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this person and their importance, but no, I think the Chiss culture is fascinating. Like, it's definitely something unique within Star Wars, and I'm excited to like get a refresher and really learn more about it. But yeah, love it.
Yeah, so you'll be able to like react and be like, oh my god, I remember this. Like that moment, really made me cry or laugh or whatever. I don't know the emotions of these books. What's the mood, MJ? Set the
tragic.
Tone here. Tragic.
I think what's so compelling about Thrawn, what drew me to him initially, was how tragic he is, because nothing ever goes right for him in the end, and he just kind of skirts by on luck and his intellect. But at the end of the day, he's been through a lot, and I think that's what makes him so complex. All of his trauma, all the life he's lived, like Scotty said, he's old. He's lived life. He's learned a lot from it. And
Yes.
that's kind of what sets him apart from the rest of the characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm excited. Also, now I can't get it off my mind. Do you know anything about this? Grand Admiral Thrawn has 10 years left. What is Scotty talking about?
Bold of Scotty to assume that Thrawn can die. He's going to retire and live out the rest of his days as a bee farmer or something.
With this boyfriend, with Eli Vanto.
Exactly.
Yes.
In the Chiss Ascendancy.
Well, I want to know about the Chiss Ascendancy. I want to know about Eli Vanto. So why don't we do this? But before we get into everything, MJ, I want to know more about like why you're the person to do this. Obviously, we talked about you have dedicated your entire social media presence to being Thrawn's PR manager, as you put it. StarWars.com, the official Star Wars team, recognizes you as like the Thrawn person, the Lars Mikkelsen stan. So, but like you obviously love all this information. How long have you been into the Thrawn stuff, and how long have you been reading these books? I know you've met Timothy Zahn, so do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, let me establish credibility first before we get in.
Lay out the resume.
I have been a fan of the Thrawn novelizations for 3 years now. I got into it right before Ascendancy came out, so it was perfect timing on my part. And I was fortunate enough to meet Timothy Zahn, where I'd like to consider us friends now. And he's passed on a lot of knowledge that some of you guys watching at home might not know. So hopefully I'll get to teach you something at the end of this class. And like you said, yes, the Star Wars admins recognized me as the #1 Thrawn fan. I mean, right before the Struck series featuring him was released, they used to tag me in their posts and be like, hey, you're the CEO of Thrawn Talk. So I guess Chiss Twitter and now TikTok, I'm just, if you're on any platform, you will know me as the person who's the loudest and the most correct about Thrawn. So check out my stuff, I guess.
I love that.
At Chimera Chat. Yeah, you do tons of stuff. I saw you do also edits, which the edits are super slay. Yeah, I'm super excited to do this. Like I said, new series on the podcast. The way we're going to do this is the person that comes on has prepared a PowerPoint presentation for us to react to. So it's really like we're going to be in class. And for audio listeners, no worries. We're still going to have everything's going to be perfect for you. We're still keeping you in mind. Obviously, the PowerPoint presentation, it looks slay, it looks amazing, but you'll be fine just listening to audio, or if you're someone who's putting the YouTube video on in the background, we see you, we love you, and we're still going to keep you in mind. So no worries about any of that. But MJ put together this wonderful PowerPoint presentation that she's going to take us through. Thrawn 101, Chimera Chat presents. MJ, take it from here.
Class is in session. All right. I expect full attention. You will be graded accordingly. There's a quiz at the end of this. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I did not study.
All right.
Chelsea studied, apparently. Cheated.
Yeah.
Knows all the information.
Chelsea's my best student. All right. Let's start with the basics. There are 2 canon Thrawn trilogies. One is the Imperial trilogy. The second is the Ascendancy trilogy. And while the Imperial trilogy was released first, you should definitely read that one first as well, because although Ascendancy chronologically takes place beforehand, there are things that you will miss out on or not be able to appreciate because they're little references to the books that were released first. So if you haven't read the Thrawn books, I would highly recommend them, especially if you're interested in following his live action adaptation and where that goes, because you will get to know Thrawn as a character better in canon in these books. I don't recommend reading Legends first, if you want to get to know Thrawn as a character and his motivations, because in the Heir to the Empire trilogy, he's kind of sidelined in that first novel. And while he does become a major player, obviously that's the trilogy where we're first introduced to him, these canon novels focus on him and his story. And so that's what we're going to focus on today in this PowerPoint, him and his story. There's a lot more plot in these books. You're not going to get to know everything from this video alone, so that's why I recommend reading these books in this order that I have listed here on the slide, but we're going to start in chronological order.
I love that. I'm so excited.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I like. First, I just want to say that I like that he got to be the protagonist of these novels because it offers a different perspective. I've read Heir to the Empire. People who say that that's a Thrawn book are either lying to themselves or have not read that book, because he is literally just in a few scenes in the background. He has more of a background role. So, I forgot to say I've read the first Thrawn book, but I haven't read the other 5. So
I'm the dummy. I'm the dummy. Just me.
No, I'm the dummy.
That just
too,
means
because
you'll
I don't
learn the
know anything
most.
else.
You'll have the most growth by the end of this.
Yes.
I'm
All
ready.
right. Okay, so this is kind of piggybacking what Austin just said. So a lot of people watching probably only know Thrawn from the TV series or maybe from the Legends books, whereas in these books, Thrawn is the protagonist. And that's what's so important about the point of view. These books are told centered around Thrawn. So in a series such as Rebels, he's the antagonist. So he's trying to stop our main characters. And obviously that's going to paint him as a more villainous role. Whereas in these books, you learn, oh, he's doing this because of this, this, and this. And so it's, I wouldn't say it's easier to root for him, but you definitely get a clearer picture as to why he's doing what he's doing. I don't like using the V word for him because he is a morally good character. What are your thoughts on that? Do you guys, at the beginning of this PowerPoint, do you guys see him as a stark villain, like cold-hearted military man?
I mean, just based off the TV series, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's kind of how they portray him.
Yeah.
But I know there's more to him. I know he has like a motivation in these books, and that's what I want to learn more about. How about you, Scotty?
I mean, I guess I do know more than I let on at the beginning, but I could have went on a whole tangent about all the little... I feel like I know main plot points about him, and so many people, just like you said, MJ, are like, Thrawn is actually not a V word. He, like, actually has motivations that are, like, bigger than what... just this little portion of, like, this conflict that we're seeing. So I try to keep that in mind, even though, as somebody who hasn't read anything, I've also only seen him portrayed as a villain, but I'm ready to figure out why that is not the case. And I want to understand why you and other people are like, Thrawn actually is not a bad person.
I feel like, so I watched Rebels in its entirety before I got into reading the book, so definitely based off of just Rebels, I was like, he's stinky, because I'm just such a Ghost Crew fan. I love Kanan and Hera so badly. So like, obviously, and you know, it was a kids TV show, so it's gonna be hammed up, like dramatized a little bit. But after reading the books, it definitely really gave me a fresh perspective, and I was like, the ultimate evil is the Empire and how fascism impacts people and da. So like, I definitely agree with the assessment that it's, you know, he's not a V word, and if anything, like, is more along the lines of like an anti-hero sort of thing. And I hope we get to see more of that reflected in future television.
Yes. I like what you said about the Empire is the real enemy, because in a sense, he's like an allegory for how, in the books, an alien, or in real life, minorities and people of color, how they have to take part in a system that actively oppresses them solely for their survival. And that's kind of the themes that the Empire trilogy especially explores. So, like I said earlier, the timeline's a little funky when you look at where to start. A lot of people get overwhelmed, but I kind of did a breakdown on the events in order and where they fall into place with the events of, like Chelsea mentioned, Rebels. Because where's Eli in all of this? Like, you read the books and then you're like, wait, what's happening? So it's very important to get an understanding of when all of these things are taking place, especially when you have chapters called memories. So a lot of the books, not just the Ascendancy books, but also in Alliances, they are divided into two halves, and there will be chapters alternating between the present timeline that the book is following and also memories, which are just an earlier date. And those memories don't fall in the same order. So for example, the Chaos Rising memories, just the Chaos Rising plotline takes place at the same time as the Alliance's memories. So when Anakin is with Thrawn, that's actually set during the Chaos Rising book. And it gets a little confusing, but it's just something to bear in mind because Thrawn is a character who changes a lot throughout his life. As we see with Legends, he's not the same person he was back when he was 19 years old. Like,
which makes sense. I don't think any of us are.
It's so frustrating when people are like, Canon Thrawn and Legends Thrawn are two different characters. No, they're not. They're written the same exact way. They're just told from different perspectives, and he's also at a different stage in his life. So, something to bear in mind.
You tell them, because people will argue that point so much. I even see it. I'm not even up in Chiss Twitter, so you heard it from the source. Thrawn's PR manager.
Exactly. And doesn't Timothy Zahn also see it like in the same continuity?
Yes.
Like,
he does not write the same character differently. That just wouldn't make sense. Like, do you hear your argument?
Exactly. And also, when you say that scenes like from Alliances and Chaos Rising, they kind of intersect, is there literally same scenes? Like in some of the books, do they like show the same exact scenes?
It's not the same exact scene. It's just, here's a moment right before that scene that you know. So I'll give you a specific example. So in Thrawn Alliances, that's when Anakin and Thrawn are together on Batuu. In Chaos Rising, which was written after Alliances, you learn that his Skywalker assistant was with him the whole time. But that's a detail that wasn't established yet in Alliances. And that's what's so beautiful about Timothy Zahn's writing, is that he doesn't add unnecessary details or stipulations, because he can go back and build upon what's already established. So the prologue for Thrawn is the epilogue of Lesser Evil. It's all connected. It's all one consistent circle.
Ooh,
everything connects.
Like that. I love a good. It's like a TV series of books. I like it. Comes full circle.
I like that too. However, when you're like, when they're on Batuu, and I'm like, oh, it's fucking Galaxy's Edge, of course.
But it's so cool. The inclusion, honestly, I think it's one of those inclusions that, like, at first you roll your eyes, but it genuinely feels so lived in. And then when you actually get to go to Batuu and, like, visit the parks, and you're like, oh my fucking god, Thrawn and Anakin, they were here at the blaster mark in the cantina. Like, holy shit. Like, it's one of those things that's, I think it's just really fun.
Like, would you rather go to a cantina that's just themed Star Wars, or go to a cantina that you know the coolest character has been in with Anakin Skywalker, and they had a bar fight there, and there were aliens that froze them in their place, turned them to stone? Like, it adds a liveliness. Like, these walls have had stories, even though they haven't.
Right.
All right. Are we ready? Are we ready?
Yeah.
Class? Okay, we're going to start in the chronological order. So we're starting with Ascendancy, Chaos Rising, Greater Good, and Lesser Evil. This is my favorite trilogy, so if I spend a lot of time on this, it's for good reason, because there's a lot to these books, and this is going to be a gross oversimplification, because each of these books has like 3 or 4 simultaneous plot lines going on, so there's a lot, but we're here to focus on Thrawn, and these books, they start at the beginning when Thrawn joins the Chiss military. And we're going to get into that in more detail in the next slides. But this is from his beginning as a complete rookie to climbing the ranks among his own people, all the way to his exile and why he ends up in the Empire. The main antagonists for these books are all connected. I love that these books build upon themselves, because in the first book you're like, okay, there's a bunch of all these aliens and we don't know who really did these attacks on the Chiss Ascendancy, but we follow Thrawn trying to sleuth his way and piece things together, and the dominoes cascade in a line. Like, they really build upon themselves, because you learn that there's actually a big bad behind the big bads, and it's like puppeteering, like who's behind who, and it's like you learn that eventually the biggest bad in Chiss space are the Grisks, and we're gonna definitely talk about them a lot.
That's what I was gonna ask. So this is all taking place in Chiss space, this trilogy. Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
I love that chistery lesson.
It's time for a chistery lesson. It's very hard to discuss the events of this trilogy without having a basic understanding of how Chiss culture works, because it's a lot different from the Star Wars we've seen. They're like an isolationist species, and they really stick to themselves, and they have strict rules, and they've sort of always been that way. So obviously the species are called the Chiss. They speak the Chun language, and their capital planet is Chila. That's a fun one to say.
Chila.
And they're really divided by the government and their military. So obviously the government, they cause a lot of problems in this book. So it's broken down by 9 ruling families. So a family you may know is the Myth, as in Mithran Nuruodo. But there are a bunch of different... I try. I'm not as good as Mark Thompson, but I try. Yeah, so they are kind of like the government. They control most of what goes on in the culture, and they're not supposed to have affluence over what happens in the military, but they do, and that's what causes a lot of the problems that our protagonists face. And in addition to that, there's a whole political side to the books, where we see how the rivalries between the ruling families and the 40 lesser families, how they sort of have a play in what happens.
Yeah,
I believe there's been civil war.
I was gonna say, it sounds a little messy. Like there's potential for this to get messy, so civil war does not surprise me.
And the thing about the antagonists is that because Chiss really keep to their own, they're always trying to find sneaky little ways to get on the planets and just learn as much as they can so that they can manipulate. One of the major plot lines later on in the series is an alien like going onto a planet and just wreaking hell because of like learning that there's rivalries and stuff like that, and like sending people into the Capitol buildings and just lying. There's a lot of gaslighting from the Grisks and the people the Grisks hire. On a less messy note, there's the military, which is where our beloved protagonists work. So the Chiss Navy is called the Chiss Expansionary Defense Fleet, CEDF, and that's what Thrawn is recruited into. One of the most interesting things about the Chiss Navy is that their navigators are called Skywalkers, and they're all like preteen and teen girls who are force sensitive. But they don't call it the Force, they call it third sight, because these Skywalkers can see a little bit into the future, like a few minutes, a few seconds, and so it allows them to navigate the ships. They don't know a lot about the Force, and that becomes important later, because all of the Skywalkers seem to lose their third sight abilities when they age out of it. So like once they get to their late teen years, they lose their ability to use the Force and to navigate.
Do we know why that is, or is that something you'll get into later?
We don't know why that is, but there is a major character working to figure that out.
And I also wanted to ask, because I see on the slide you said mostly female. So is there some male Skywalkers, or is it like a rare thing?
None of the main characters are male Skywalkers, but I'm pretty sure there can be. Like, there's nothing prohibiting them.
Interesting.
It's just usually female.
Cool.
That would be nice to maybe see a male Skywalker character. And most importantly, there's no preemptive strikes. Like I said, the Chiss, they're pretty isolationist. We keep to our own. We do the thing that we've been doing forever because it keeps us safe. And we don't attack unless we are attacked. This becomes a problem for somebody who doesn't really like following the rules when he knows that there are better ways to go about things. Earlier, I asked you guys if you've seen Moana, because I feel like the easiest way to explain the Chiss culture to someone who has like no knowledge of the books is they're the island from Moana, because they're like, we go by tradition, nothing changes, we just stick to ourselves, everything's fine. But then comes along this little protagonist who's like, we need to save our people, we gotta get out there, we gotta explore. So
it's Thrawn
of the Chiss Expansionary Defense Fleet.
It's funny, as you were explaining it, like that they don't attack unless they're attacked or whatever, I was clicking in my mind, you mentioning Moana earlier, it was just, I was like, oh, I totally get it now. Like, great way to explain it.
I love rewatching that movie and being like, wow, rip Thrawn, you would have loved Moana 2016.
Have you,
Rewatching
next time you see Timothy Zahn, you have to ask him if he likes Moana, if he's seen it.
I mean, he's a Disney fan. He likes Pixar, so I wouldn't put it past him.
Slay.
Yeah. Ask him for me.
All right. So, no preemptive strikes. That brings us to our lovely main character, our best boy, Thrawn Nuruodo. But we don't meet him as a myth. We meet him as a Kivu. So, born on the planet of Rentor, which is a poor little dingy planet. It's not a political hub, not a cultural hub. It's very backwater. Aristocra Thurfian, who is Thrawn's #1 hater from day one, he calls his family insignificant to his face. He tells him, you'll never amount to anything because you come from a family like the Kivu, an insignificant family. So we gotta keep a lookout for this hater, Thurfian.
What a delight.
But this was a perfect time to explain how Chiss names work. So if you look on the PowerPoint slides, I've highlighted the parts of the name. So there's a family name, like I mentioned earlier, the 9 ruling families and 40 main families, which are the political bodies. And so the first part of the name is the family you come from or were adopted into. So Thrawn was born a Kivu, so it's Kivu Nuru. So his core name, which is what they all are addressed as, is Vuron. This later becomes Thrawn, but and then in the special case of Thrawn, he gets a suffix added to his name in the later books, which is the Odo. The Odo was gifted to him. It was like an honorary title from the Stybla family, and it's basically a super special title that they give to people who are like a guardian or protector figure. Someone who has proved themselves worthy of extraordinary respect because of the mission that he went on for the Stybla family. So he's a very decorated.
That's my boy Thrawn. Give it up to Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Honestly, it just amazes me that like Timothy Zahn and other authors can come up with all this crazy like world building, because I'm like, I cannot just like coming up with like different ways that they do their names with their family name and then a suffix and all that. I'm like, this is a lot. I'm not like creative enough to do all that.
Even on the toughest strain, cannot come up with that type of stuff.
Oh my god.
Not to have like a polyglot moment, but in Latin, you go by a praenomen, cognomen, and nomen. So there's like a first, middle, and last name, but you only go by the middle name. So reading these books as someone who speaks Latin, I was like, oh, they go by their nomen. I don't know.
Well, that'll be our next episode, Latin for Dummies.
Yeah, Latin 101. Surprisingly, would probably be a lot quicker than this one. Roman history has nothing on the Chiss history. Like, my Roman Empire is the Chiss history. Thrawn also had an older sister named Vurika, who we later know as Borika, but she's also mentioned in this first book, but then comes back later. She was taken from home when Thrawn was 5, I believe. He was very young, and his parents never told him why. So that was kind of like baby's first trauma.
Literally, I was like, trauma.
Were they close?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they were. It's assumed they were very close because
poor Thrawn.
I feel like he was eager to join the military so that he could look for her. That's just my personal headcanon. But like picturing a young adult Thrawn being like, "Have you seen my sister?" Because later on we learned that she was a Skywalker. So
that's
she was taken from home because of her Force abilities to be used by the Chiss military, which not a fan of that.
So they take
them taking little girls.
They take them, like force them to do that.
Kind of like how the Jedi.
I was gonna say it sounds just like the Jedi in the core worlds. Like, you have the Force. You have a greater purpose now that you have no choice. If you're gonna do, you're gonna do.
But then I imagine the trauma once they turn, what's the age, 15?
Oh my
then do they
God.
feel like they have no purpose, right?
Yeah.
And that is addressed with my favorite Chiss character, my favorite non-Thrawn Chiss character. Her name is Thalius, and she was
I love her.
a Chiss Skywalker on the ship that Thrawn was on. And this was early days, and hold on, I'm trying to find the quote. I have the receipts, man. Okay. So Thalius aged out. I believe it was a little bit younger than 15, which, can you imagine if you're less than average? That would be terrible for your self-esteem, like your purpose running out even early. Because what are you going to do? If not this, then what? But Thalius bumps into Thrawn on the ship, and she's like crying, and she's like freaking out about her life's purpose. And Thrawn gets down on his knees and says that, but while all of us face a variety of paths, we all have the power to choose among them. So he kind of reassures her that you control your destiny and you're gonna end up right where you want to be, and that her life isn't over. Which, I don't know if you guys have ever been a 15-year-old girl, but that's exactly what you need to hear. Like,
can't say I have, but I can imagine. I mean, you're basically having like a midlife crisis at 15, because and those are like your cognitive years, is like your brain's building and shit, at least for like humans in our world. So I can't imagine giving this like these people with this higher purpose, but they're so young to begin with, and then it's like, what do you do for the rest of your life now that you've been used, essentially?
It hella reminds me of like Gifted Kid burnout, where it's like you're like only praised for being good at school, and you're told you're so smart all the time, and then you're done school and you're like, now what the fuck do I do? Like, but it's not school, but it's like, I had this special ability that I was chosen to use and contribute to this, like. And two, it's not just like, I have the Force and whatever. It's like, you're in the fucking military. Like, these are little, I mean, again, it's similar to the Jedi, like in the Clone Wars era, where it's like, these are literal fucking children going into war. Like, that just that level of pressure that you have just for then, it's like, okay, what now? And then, like you said, it does get addressed a little bit about what typically happens to people. And so I won't get ahead of myself, because I'm sure we'll touch on that later.
I'm glad you remember that, because that's one of my favorite plot lines that gets explored later on. But I also feel like that moment where Thrawn comforts this young girl speaks very highly of his character, because he gets down on his knees to talk to her at her level. Like, one thing about Thrawn is that he respects the people of all species and all walks of life as equals. Like, he got on her level, and he didn't talk down to her like most adults talk down to the Skywalkers. And he has another Skywalker of his own later on his own ship called Sherry. And he lets Sherry know what's going on. Because if everyone else gets to, why shouldn't she? She's part of this crew too. And I love that he respects, there's this mutual sense of respect.
Okay, hold on. How do they spell Sherry? Because I know there is not a Chiss named Sherry. Like, hey, Sherry girl. Like,
it's like the French word, so it's Cheri, like
Okay.
Sherry Lady, the modern talking song.
Okay, because I'm like,
You're
Sherry. It's like, here's Mithran Nuodo or whatever, and then Sherry. Like,
Can I also just say that, so we've learned so far that Thrawn has a boyfriend. Well, I guess we haven't touched on that yet, but now he also
No.
has a dead name. And so I feel like
Vuron is his dead name.
I feel like there's some deep themes we've been talking about, but what about
Well, let's
what
look
about
at the
that theme?
demographics of Chiss Twitter.
Real.
But seriously, on a serious note, the demographics of Chiss Twitter, this character who came from humble means, who also people identify with because of his neurodivergent tendencies. I mean, there are lines where he talks about how he has trouble understanding social cues. And like you said, the queer coding of this character. There's so much to this character that people just completely disregard and be like, well, how dare you like him? He's a bad guy. There are so many layers that you're not like, you're doing him a disservice by saying he's a one-dimensional character. And I think another reason why a lot of minority relate to Thrawn, especially speaking myself, like as a woman, Thrawn as an outcast in the Empire, he has to work twice as hard to get half of the credit. An interesting thing about when Timothy Zahn was creating Thrawn, he asked himself, well, why aren't there any alien characters in the Empire in the original trilogy? And he was like, that's what I'm going to do. And the reason why there aren't is because they're not as qualified as Thrawn, and also because of xenophobia. And xenophobia is definitely addressed in the Imperial trilogy. We're going to get to that theme later, but there's important stuff going on.
Good.
So Ki-Vuron gets adopted as Mithran. They sort of take him in because he can provide perspectives that no one else can. Like Chelsea said, he's a gifted kid. He, like I mentioned earlier, that throughout the Ascendancy trilogy, they're really trying to look at ships and interview aliens and try to figure out who's really behind the attacks. Because it's not the Patatas, even though the Chiss government want to blame them. We're going to figure out that it's the Agbui. And then we're going to figure out, oh, well, actually the Agbui were being controlled by the Grisks the whole time. And there's always a bigger fish, as Qui-Gon said. There's always a greater threat. But Thrawn is a character who can sort of analyze. He can assess a scene. Like Sherlock. We're going to talk about the ties of Thrawn to Sherlock later, too. But he's very observant, but also with his extensive background of art and culture, it really sets him apart from the other people in the military. They're like, how did you figure this out? And he's like, oh, because it's the metal from the so-and-so species, so that means so-and-so.
I like this because it really shows, because we know the character of Thrawn as, like, you know, being really well prepared and, you know, a huge knowledge of art and culture. So I really like that. So you would say that the Ascendancy novels really kind of get you where you need to know Thrawn in the Empire, like really explains his backstory and motives in that trilogy.
I think it's very interesting after you've read the Ascendancy trilogy to realize just how decorated he was in their military, and then he starts all over as a cadet in the Empire.
Oof,
so
I could not imagine.
He's at the cadet school with people who, this is their first day holding a blaster. And Thrawn's been serving in the military for what, 20, 30 years? Like,
damn. Oh, and he's an adult. He's not like a fresh kid, like right out of his house. He's like in cadet school with Han Solo. Like,
that's one of my like favorite scenes in the Thrawn book. But we'll talk about it later once we get to that book. But there's my favorite scene connects to what we just talked about.
I also want to talk about how, why Thrawn, why did the Myth think he was so valuable? Because it's worth mentioning, back to hater number one, Thurfian, who said you'll never become anything because you're from the Kivu. Thrawn skips the normal interview process to become a mere adoptive because the military is like, we need him now. And so there's already that kind of, why is he getting special treatment? And that's, like you said, because he's this mastermind. It's such a touching moment between him and Thurfian, because Thurfian's like, I'm taking you to this planet to have your interview. And Thrawn's like, I can't miss class. Like, that lets you know who he is. He's a nerd. Like, you're about to make the biggest military decision of your life, change your complete family, and you're worried about homework? Like, his heart's always in the right place. His heart's always in the right place. There's no ego with Thrawn. He's always doing it to serve other people. It's all for, excuse the pun, it's for the greater good. And that's why I wanted to talk about him on like the moral alignment chart, because this is something that throws the strictly TV fans for a loop. When I say that Thrawn is chaotic good, ask Timothy Zahn. There's no hesitation that he falls under the good. He's not neutral. He is good 100%, because at the end of the day, everything he's doing is for his people. Like, he is I would say one of the most selfless characters in all of Star Wars, because look at how much he's sacrificed.
Right.
Humble king.
Yes, humble king. This is great for PR. We're going to throw all the adjectives his way.
Yes.
So he's usually a rule follower, but he breaks them with sound reason. So here's our first mention of Admiral Aralani, but he kind of like doesn't always listen to what he's told, because he'll see a different way to go about it. And in the end, he'll be right. But it's also like, hey, you can't do that because rules are rules. I'm your superior officer, stuff like that. So he's always getting in trouble. And while he does have a lot of good friends like Admiral Aralani to vouch for him, down the line, he runs out of luck. Another example of this would be in the first book, Chaos Rising. He gets accused of cheating because he scores a 95 on his like placement test, and he's not allowed to retake it because it's randomized, so that he can't prove that he wasn't cheating. So Admiral Aralani vouches for him and says, let him do it for real. And that's the only way that Thrawn can prove that he was actually honestly could figure it out, by doing it for real, which how many of the other newbies can just go out there and get an A, perfect score, first try? And he did it twice.
Okay. Wow. Come on, Thrawn. Okay.
That's what I
child
said.
syndrome. This, as Chimera Chat, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about, but one of the questions I get asked most often is what is up with the symbol on the bottom of his ISD. I feel like this is just such fun information that's revealed in the first Ascendancy book. I've seen people on Twitter be like, oh, this must be a Night Sister symbol because he's working with them now. And I'm like, read the book! Read the book!
Oh my
I wish I could just like throw them at them. But Thrawn and Thalius go to this, God, I don't even know what it was, but it's one of the Pakash areas. And the Pakash were who the Chiss originally blamed for the attacks. And so he's trying just to like assess the situation. But when he meets Ungali, I hope I'm saying that right, Ungali for the first time, before they depart, he's gifted with this ring that's a prized family heirloom of his sub-clan. And Ungali wants Thrawn to take this with him so that they won't be forgotten. And Thrawn, he just really takes this to heart. And I think there's a line here. It says that for the first time since Thalius had met him, Thrawn seemed genuinely surprised. And I just love that he says that he'll guard it in a place of honor, and then later down the road, it's on his ISD.
Yeah.
Like, what better way to honor this friend than to dedicate his whole Imperial presence to that sub-clan logo.
I imagine that he would have it tattooed on him, like, given the option. Like, it feels like that important to him.
That was my prediction,
mean,
is where it came from. I thought it was like
Kid-
his tramp stamp or something.
It would make a six-back tattoo. I'm gonna be honest.
Honestly, yeah, I agree. Ooh, now we're getting into hot Thrawn.
Yes. Okay. So this is book 2. We're getting into a little bit more of an older Thrawn. As you can see, he's very decorated. In the picture, what's on him, those are called honor chains. So for each special mission or something out of the ordinary that they complete, like almost like an act of service. You know how there's like Purple Hearts and stuff like that in our military?
Yeah.
They get special charms from the different families. So that pinwheel in the middle, that's from the Stybla, who gave him the Odo suffix to his name. That
Okay.
he's a protector.
Oh my god,
but
it's
I
like
think-
a Pandora bracelet.
Yes, it's his Pandora bracelet. I think each charm tells a story. But I think there's
Honestly.
something so symbolic about the longer you serve in the military and the more missions you accomplish, the more you risk for them, the heavier the chains are physically.
Ooh,
and
yeah.
it represents how heavy the burden, like the weight you're carrying. So I think the biggest plot line in this book deals with a planet called Sunrise, when Thrawn meets the species who are under attack by who we learn are the Grisk. And this book is so underrated in my opinion. I think some of the best quotes, the most character-defining quotes, come from Thrawn. My favorite Thrawn quote of all time comes from this book, and it's the fact that this leader, the Magus, she has decided for her species that we don't stand a chance, so we're all going to take a group slumber as a species and just die. We're going to we're going to have like a mass suicide pact.
Oh god.
And Thrawn, he hears about this and he's like, absolutely not. We're going to figure this out. He names their planet Sunrise, which in and of itself, of course he would come up with that name, the hopeful little guy he is. The name Sunrise, like how
Right.
sweet. But the quote, the Magus tongues darted out. You mock our destruction. Not at all, Thrawn said. I choose to nurture hope. There is no hope. We will know soon enough, Thrawn said. Until then, I will hold to hope. That, that's his MO. Like, Hera says the same thing in Rebels. He's a hopeful individual. He's not evil. He's not saying, well, you all should just kill yourselves anyway. The quote above, all lives are important. I resist the thought of standing by and watching 200 possibly needless deaths. Does that sound like an evil warmonger to you?
Nope.
All lives
not
are
at all.
important? Thrawn is one of the only characters in the Ascendancy books who isn't xenophobic. The Chiss, they don't like outsiders. Thrawn, he values other cultures. He wants to learn about their art. He sees them as other people. And that's what sets him apart from all the other characters, both in the Ascendancy and also just in all of Star Wars.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I did not know that at all.
Yeah, hope is the good guys. That's rebellion talk right there.
Exactly. I wonder, I feel like Thrawn would have been the best rebel, but that wasn't what was in the cards for him, and that's okay.
Honestly, the tactics he could have pulled for them to like pull some shit off, like he would have made it happen.
Okay, we're moving on to the last book now of the Ascendancy trilogy. This is Lesser Evil. This book made me cry. So
Oh, that
it
means
is what
it's
it
good.
is.
Did you cry, Chelsea?
I feel like I definitely found myself getting emotional. Like towards the end, like we're gonna get into like I'm sure like more what actually happens, but I remember just kind of being like, no way, like they can't do this. Like what do you mean? Like what is it? What do you mean? I don't understand. What do you mean? Like I had that kind of feeling for sure, where I was like, but he was right the whole time. Yeah.
Here we go.
Okay, so there's really 3 main things we need to talk about with Lesser Evil. Even though there's so much more going on, we're going to break it down between characters and perhaps the most life-changing event for Thrawn. So first we're going to start with Thrawn's dearest brother, who I didn't mention beforehand because they're actually not blood related. I feel like a lot of people don't know that they're not blood brothers, but in my opinion, I thought that was such a great creative choice because it just goes to show how strong their friendship was.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they were family without having family ties. Back when Thrawn was first adopted into the myth, the general, I believe it's Bakif, I hope I'm saying that right, but he tells one of the syndics, one of the political figures, that you should keep an eye out for this kid. You should meet him. And so when they first meet, Thrawn is just staring at this art. So the general tells Thras to meet this kid. And when they first meet, Thrawn's looking at this painting, and Thras is like just trying to make small talk with him.
Yeah.
And Thrawn is like, all of these art pieces in this room are done by the same artist. And Thras is like, what is this kid talking about? Like, no one has been in this room, so there's no way he could have Googled that beforehand. Like, how does he know that? And he asks him, and he says, look at the brush strokes, look at this. And also, you'll notice that in this painting, it's different. Something happened to the artist to make the brush strokes different or whatever. And Thras is just blown away, and he looks it up. And it turns out that the artist, who was a woman, she lost all 3 of her sons to war. And Thras is just so taken aback by the fact that he could infer that from a painting.
I am Thras. I would have looked it all up too after the conversation to be like,
Yeah.
Let me see if he was right. And then when I'd be like, oh shit, he was right.
And you're just blown away. You're like, this kid is special. So that's kind of the spark of their relationship. And they end up going to parties, and they always not like parties, but gatherings. And they grow very close. They go to a bistro together. And in the bistro, there's like a mugging. There's like a takeover. And Thrawn is like, whoa, we got to do something. And Thras is like, no, watch this. Watch what I can do, little brother. Sit down. And he stages this whole like dramatic scene. And Thrawn is just like, what? Like, I didn't know you could accomplish things without using violence. And Thras sort of teaches him about his weakness, because Thrawn does not understand politics. He doesn't understand dramatics, but this big brother figure of his, he shows him there are different ways to approach a situation, and you can be creative, and you can use dramatics. And Thrawn definitely adopts his older brother's sense of dramatics, because, boy, let me tell you.
Would you say he's kind of like Thrawn's first mentor then, in a sense?
I would say so. I think
Okay.
Aralani is his first real friend, but
Okay.
Thras is like probably the most impactful mentor, because sure, Thrawn has to report to the general, but they don't have a personal relationship. Thrawn and Thras are family. They call each other brother.
Yeah.
This quote right here, Thras took a deep breath, the young, socially awkward cadet fascinated by artwork. The unique ability to understand that artwork, while beneath the intellect, was the quiet pain of a hidden loss. What exactly did he see in Thrawn? What I see, he said, is a friend. My friend.
Aww.
So, like, that's so sweet. Like, they actually end up going on a mission together. And it's the mission where Thrawn gets his Stybla pinwheel, his Pandora charm pinwheel. You can see in this picture behind Thrawn is the pinwheel that's also on his chain. So he got that with his brother. His brother, unfortunately, is on a mission, and he passes away.
Yep, I knew it was coming.
This
I knew it. I
from
knew it was
Legends.
coming.
A Legends book called Outbound Flight, where Thras passes away with a human on the ship with him. And it's so neat that Timothy got to retroactively canonize a book that had previously been decanonized. Just in that one page where Thras dies, he makes some of those events canon, which is just so cool that he got to do that. He's so clever.
Wow.
You weren't kidding either. You're like, oh, my friend Timothy got to make this thing in the book. I'm like, Timothy? Timothy Zahn. You're on a first name basis. Got Timothy.
I don't call him that to his face. I call him Mr. Zahn.
MJ's like, hey Tim, like, what's going on, girlie? Let's talk
Like,
about
did
some
you
Thrawn.
see that episode of Ahsoka last night? Anyways,
Shout out
shan't.
Thras.
I shan't.
That's bad.
Um,
I'm sad. Throw that Thras back. I'm sad.
We
Throw
love
that Thras back.
Rip Thrawn.
I've been waiting to say that ever since I knew, because MJ was talking about the PowerPoint on like Twitter or whatever. I was like talking about Thras. I was like, ooh, I was practicing that one in the mirror.
That's too good.
Rip.
Wow. I just need a moment to just
Yeah,
think
moment of
about where I'm
silence.
going next. I'm sorry. In this book, we also learned more about Thrawn's blood-related sibling, who unfortunately he does not reunite with. That was actually supposed to happen, but was scrapped. A little tidbit of information, some exclusive stuff. But we learned that Borika, his older sister, is living on a ranch. So when Thras dies, he has this message for that Skywalker from earlier, Thalius, who's all grown up now, and Thras gives Thalius posthumously this like USB drive. I don't know what the Chiss word for it is, but he basically gives her like a flash drive with all of this information about the Skywalkers, and he says, "Go to Borika, and you'll know what to do." And she's like, "Whoa, Thrawn has a sister? What?" And so she goes to this ranch, and she's like, "Okay, I'm looking for Borika," and Borika's like, "I'm just a simple farm woman." And then she's like, "Oh well, Syndic Thras sent me." And then Borika whips out her gun and is like, "Get inside! We don't have much time." Like, it's super dramatic. It's so good. I love this book. But we learned that Borika has been doing this research facility, trying to figure out why the Skywalker powers go away, what happens to the Skywalkers, like, why do they take them, what happens when they lose all of their memories, what is the government doing to these little girls? So, Borika's on the case.
As she should be. Come on, Borika, let's go.
She's such a baddie. She's a fan favorite. I feel like
Yeah.
Timothy Zahn was very surprised when I told him that we love Borika, because she doesn't have much in the books, just like page number wise. So hopefully we'll see more of her in the future.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've seen the
she's
fan art of
questioning-
her in her farm outfit, the little farm crop top. I've seen it.
That sounds
Or it's not
cute.
crop top. It's like where they like tie it.
Mm-hmm. She and her husband live on a ranch, living the quiet life.
But she's also like questioning the authority and the establishment, which is probably why so many people love her. I'm already like, hell yeah, I stand. Like,
She's like Thrawn, but cooler.
Girl boss.
Okay. I think the most important quote from this book, which has been more relevant than ever lately, is, "My job, the sole reason for my existence, is to defend the Chiss Ascendancy and protect my people. I will do whatever is necessary to achieve that goal, and I will allow nothing and no one to stand in my way. Do you understand?" This sums up Thrawn's motivations to a T. And, you can get deeper into it. Like, does Thrawn have a personality outside of being a military tool? Like, does he have a sense of self? Which, we don't have time to unpack these deep psychological issues with Thrawn. But it definitely goes to show that his heart is in the right place. He is doing the absolute most, no matter whatever it takes, to protect his people and do his job.
do we know how old he was when he joined the military?
20, when he was adopted.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, this has basically been his whole adult life has been military and like fighting for what's right and for his people.
Yeah.
It's all he's ever known. It's all he's good at. He doesn't know politics. He struggles socially, but he's an asset. And that's all the government really sees him as, which is sad.
And he likes art, but he is not an artist himself, correct?
No, correct.
Is he just like bad at it, or he never tried?
I don't know. there is a cool little line where Aralani like pans, like waves to the window and like motioning to space, and she says, "This is your canvas, paint me something." And so it's kind of like he's an artist in his own respect, because he applies that knowledge of art and culture to his job.
But wasn't there like a punny line, or he said it a couple times in Rebels, where he was like, the art of war, or some shit like that?
That's how you know Timothy Zahn didn't write it. However, Tim does have some pretty bad puns sometimes, because that last line, I think Thrawn's last line in Legends is, "It was artistically done," or whatever. Like, okay, give me a break. Give me a break, art kid.
All right, well, we'll shoot Tim a DM after we finish recording to see
on Facebook.
Yes, we'll get on Messenger and we'll ask Tim if Thrawn can do art or if he just appreciates it.
Ask him for some pictures of his cat as well while you're at it.
Yes.
He says he gets all of his ideas for books with a cat on top of him. So really, who's the mastermind behind this?
This is telepathic.
In the way that the Grisks were controlling the other alien species, the cat is controlling them. All right.
It's like poetry, it rhymes.
Okay.
Ooh, hotter.
The moment you've all been waiting for. He girl bosses a little too close to the sun. His Icarian moment. He ran out of luck on this one. The government... Wait, go ahead.
He's like a really hot like daddy here, I could imagine. He's like what? Like 45 or something at this point? 50?
I'll send
maybe?
You some pictures of Lars Mikkelsen when we're done with this. from my archives. Yeah. What is to say about Thrawn's exile? The politicians were actively working against him the whole time. You remember Hader 1? From day one, Thurfian, he recruited people from other families. Like, this man is a problem. He's going to bring shame to my family, and by association, he'll bring shame to yours. We got to take him down. And so they're kind of working behind the scenes to put a stop to him, military speaking. In addition to this, Thalius also, his friend, has to go on a wild goose chase of her own. She actually ends up taking these trial exams solely to try and protect Thrawn, because initially they wanted her to spy on him. There's so much going on. But in the end, Thrawn broke a little too many rules. Like I said, we're very set in our ways, no preemptive strikes, and while Thrawn was successful in the takedown, he wasn't successful in his means, and he gets in a lot of trouble, and he has to go to trial, and he's in front of a tribunal. So at the tribunal, where Thrawn is officially exiled, and all of his colleagues are watching, all of his friends, they're all there. It's a very heartbreaking scene, and it must be so humiliating, because he's standing in front of everyone, in front of the 9 ruling families, and they strip him of his honor chains, all of his accolades, but also how symbolic is that? He's freed from the weight of the Ascendancy and is able to choose his own path, kind of like what he told Thalius. He's breaking free. Yes, he's quite literally breaking his chains. And later on, when Bakith is preparing him to go into exile, he's giving him like his packing list that he went over. Bakith hands him something. He says, "We got this earlier from the tribunal. We thought you'd want to have it."
Oh, God.
And he hands him the Stybla pinwheel charm.
Aww.
And Thrawn says, "No, thank you. I don't want it to get broken where I'm going."
Damn.
Like, how sentimental is that little boy who's only ever known being a tool for the military, who's only ever felt the love from this man who wasn't his brother? Like, he was taken from his family at a young age, his poor family, mind you, and has only been used as a tool for forever. Do you want to know how he spends his last day in the Chiss Ascendancy? Alone at the bistro where he and Thras used to eat cheese and play board games.
Damn.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I would cry, probably.
So I don't want to hear
I'd
anyone
cry.
say that Thrawn is heartless, he doesn't have emotions, he's not sentimental, he's evil. This is a family man who has no sense of self.
Right.
Ugh.
Right. So that sort of wraps up the Ascendancy trilogy. Thoughts, questions, concerns?
Trauma.
Trauma.
Do we,
I
do we
wasn't
know
kidding
when?
about tragedy.
Right. Do we know when on the timeline he gets put into exile? Like, has the Clone Wars ended, or is it before the Clone Wars ends?
The Clone
yeah.
Wars has ended because when Thrawn meets Palpatine for the first time, he says, "Oh, I know you're General Skywalker," and he's already Vader. So this is already early days of the Empire. Think Bad Batch era. Era.
Oh,
Okay. Interesting.
Years,
Because
like 10
Governor
years
Price-
after.
Governor Price isn't governor of Lothal yet.
Interesting.
This brings us to the Imperial trilogy. Thrawn 2017, Thrawn Alliances, and Thrawn Treason. These books, oh my gosh. This is where you start. If you're going to read the canon books, start with Imperial, because it will enhance your Ascendancy reading experience. So Thrawn 2017, do we see a few familiar faces on here?
Ooh, yes, we have
interest-
Governor Price serving cunt.
With her fuck ass
With
bob.
her bob?
Yeah.
Yes!
She did not
And
look like that in
boyfriend.
Rebels.
We have the
So
boyfriend.
much more snatched. And yes, we
Yeah.
have Eli Vanto, everyone's
looks
favorite
like-
space cowboy.
He looks like a space twink in that photo.
He's like 5'5".
Oh.
He's like 5'5".
Short king.
Short
Okay,
king.
but who's that grizzly, rugged-looking one?
That would be Neville Signy. He goes by
Oh.
Night Swan.
Okay, that's a much hotter name than Neville.
Neville, yes. I agree. So, just some like background information. The Thrawn 2017, it's told from 3 different point of views. There's a first-person Thrawn point of view, which is so interesting because none of the other books have like the word like first-person pronouns like I or you, like stuff like that. And they're journal entries because Thrawn gives Eli his diary. So this is Thrawn Eli reading Thrawn's own words.
He let him into his mind, into his secret places. How romantic.
Yes. We also follow Eli and Governor Price. It's so interesting that we got like a Governor Price story in this because in Rebels she's so one-dimensional, and
Yeah.
in this you learn that she's lived on Lothal her whole life, and her one goal is I'm gonna get off of this dirt planet and I'm gonna make it big. And she's
No.
a small girl with big dreams. She wants to be a
Yeah.
big city girl, stuff like that.
Oh,
But I feel like it-
not me.
I feel like I really
Not
like.
me feeling sympathy.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Chelsea.
No, you go. You
Nope.
go. Okay. I was just gonna say that I feel like it's getting to see like her journey again in more detail in this book compared to Thrawn's journey and how the Empire corrupts them both kind of in different ways. Well, I mean, you see more of like Thrawn's quote unquote corruption, I guess, in like the TV shows, because like you said, he very much is like in the protagonist role in all of these books. But like it's so interesting to see what having power does to both of these characters, and like they're very different, but it's cool to see like in detail before Rebels how their stories intertwined, and I just really love the way it's done.
It's fun seeing them meet for the first time and seeing them work together, and how that is so different from when they have power and are working together.
I know. I'm about ready. I'm like sympathetic for poor Governor Price. She wanted to get off. That was her one dream, and now she literally is just stuck on this damn planet. Like,
But she
Yeah.
got the one thing that drove her. Thrawn is motivated by protecting his people. Price is motivated by power, revenge, stuff like that. That is what makes her inherently a villain. It's
Yeah.
all about motivations, and like Chelsea was talking about, and point of view. Who's telling the story?
I, as a Governor Price hater, like Governor Price, probably my least favorite character of all time. The Thrawn book really, it gives her a lot more to do, and like it really puts things into perspective, and
You
I
learn
like her a
about
lot
her
more.
family. You learn about her family, the Dunium mine, how the Lothal government tries to, or not the Lothal government, how the Empire, which was the government, tries to take away her family's mine and does so. There's so much that happens. So it's so messy. So much tea.
Something about, I mean, her in Rebels is just like a mustache twirling villain, but it's crazy that a Thrawn book is what gives her like a backstory and like you actually learn more about her. That's crazy.
One thing about Thrawn, he is a feminist. All of his friends in the Ascendancy were women. He loved encouraging the Skywalkers. He's like, you know what, Price, you're not that bad. You can hang out with me. I'm an outcast anyway. Like, Thrawn is a feminist king.
It feels very queer, like we mentioned earlier.
Is you LGBT because you're gun pink? Because you're blaster. We have to be canonically correct. Because you're blaster pink. Another interesting thing about the way that this book is written is that it sort of follows a Sir Arthur Conan Doyle like setup, because Thrawn is Sherlock, Eli's Watson, and Night Swan is Moriarty. He's the villain of this first book. And if you were to tell a story from Sherlock's point of view, the mystery would be solved in one chapter. That's not a story. That's you trying to keep up with a mastermind. Thus, Eli Vanto, our Watson, he is the reader's eyes and ears into understanding what's going on around him, because I'm sorry, Eli, I love you, but he's like a normal person intellectually speaking.
He's not gifted.
Exactly. He's not gifted. He was actually on track to be a shipping person. His parents owned a shipping facility like Amazon. Think space Amazon. His parents were space Amazon employees in the middle of nowhere, out in wild space. So he's a cowboy. If you listen to the audiobooks, he's got this crazy southern twang.
Oh, it's like Brokeback Mountain. Oh, I'm not even joking, y'all. I'm like, oh my god, Thrawn and Eli Vanto Brokeback Mountain. When?
These are the live action adaptations we should be getting.
Don't tell me they get a special mission alone together.
Wait until you find out. Wait until you find out what Thrawn does with Eli. Like, anyways, because he's not in Rebels.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay. But Thrawn and Eli are kind of like an unlikely pair, and they get stuck together because, like I said, Eli just wants to be a shipping person. He wants to work with his family, do his cowboy thing. He has his life set. He's like, I'm going to graduate in a year, and this will be my job. It'll be great, smooth sailing, until this blue alien shows up. And obviously, he's not from around here. He doesn't speak Galactic Basic. So Eli, coming from far, far out in the galaxy, knows a thing or two about alien languages. So they take this little cadet, and the Imperial officers say, you're the translator now. And when Thrawn meets with Palpatine, and Palpatine decides, okay, you're an asset I could use, Thrawn's one request is, I have to take this little translator with me, because my words rely in his hands. Like, my life is in his hands, essentially, because if he says something wrong, think of the effects that could have. I think it's very interesting, not only how Eli grows under Thrawn's mentorship, because like I said, Thrawn is a lot, not necessarily smarter, but definitely has a different perspective on things. And another thing that's interesting about their dynamic is that Eli teaches him a lot too. Thrawn is not good with politics, but he's also not good with social things. And an outsider like Eli suddenly being in the bougie Coruscant inner city at the Imperial Academy, they make fun of him. They experience a lot of space racism, lots of xenophobia, and that's something that sort of bonds the two of them together, because in a way, neither of them were truly Imperials, not in the way the others were. they didn't drink the Kool-Aid. They weren't like Governor Price, who was a card-carrying, I'm going to be the best space fascist you've ever seen, and I'm going to get revenge on all of my friends from Lothal. Watch and see. They never really were truly into it. And that's what's so interesting in book 3, when Eli joins the Chiss Ascendancy.
Oh.
Because Thrawn says, your skills are too good for this empire. I'm going to send you home to work on something that you truly can get behind. Because Eli, unlike Thrawn, he questions a lot of the things the Empire does. There's a moment with Wookiee slaves, and Eli says in his thick country accent, "Sir, I don't know how comfortable I am with the Empire using slaves." And Thrawn is like, "Well, it's a necessary means to an end." But Eli's like, "I don't like this." So I'm really happy that not only could Eli serve a greater purpose and a more morally correct one, but it's also great because he gets written out of Rebels, and so he's not purgled, unlike some other people.
Oh, makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, we stand. He's like, slavery, not for me. Come
Exactly.
on, Eli.
This is a bit of spoilers, but in book 3, Eli feels frustrated being among the Chiss because obviously now he's the alien. He doesn't have many friends or whatever. And he's like, I think my work is kind of pointless. And later on in the book, he learns he was actually doing the numbers for the Skywalker research program. Thrawn trusted him so much that he sent him to work on the most important thing to him personally, because obviously Thrawn's sister was a Skywalker.
I was gonna say, yeah, that was with his sister, right?
Damn.
What is her name?
Borika.
Barika. Did they work together, or was she like dead by then?
I think she's still on her ranch. He was actually on a ship because he was a Navy officer. So the Imperial Navy is like the CEDF. They're kind of the same thing.
Okay.
The interesting thing at the end of Thrawn 2017 is that obviously he gets promoted to Grand Admiral. And this is sort of where we start to get into the Rebels timeline, because Eli's gone, and now we're going to focus on Vader and Krennic and all of the familiar faces we have. But one thing that separates Thrawn from the other Grand Admirals, especially, this makes a lot of sense coming when you take his background into account, like where he comes from and his origins and just all the experience he has. But Thrawn, he doesn't lead out of fear. He leads out of mutual respect. I sort of mentioned that earlier, how when he was with the Ascendancy still, he would get on the level of the Skywalkers. He would address them like they were adults. He would treat them as equals because we're all working towards the same mission. And how are we going to accomplish anything if you don't respect me and I don't respect you?
And they were so necessary and integral, so you would think they would have treated them better.
Exactly.
No, they treated them like an asset.
They didn't see them as people, whereas Thrawn, one of the most compassionate Chiss ever, views everyone as a person. What was the quote? All life is valuable and worth living. So here's a quote from Lesser Evil, where it says, "Did Thrawn even recognize the depth of loyalty he inspired in those who worked around him? Knowing Thrawn, probably not." And while he's clueless, you look at all of the sacrifices that his crew made for him. Look at the end of Rebels. Look at the Struck live action series. His followers are willing to die for him on a whim's notice because of how much of a good and powerful leader he is. But this is a quote from Alliances, which is the next book we're talking about. The Grand Admiral was smart and subtle, but never used his brilliance to show up or humiliate anyone. He demanded results, but never perfection, and had amazing stores of patience for those who were truly working to their fullest ability. He cared about his people to the point of standing up for them, even against the disapproval of powerful men like Lord Vader.
Oh,
like, Vader is the toughest. He's like Palpatine's number 2. But if you make fun of my little officer over there, you're gonna get it, because that's my worker. Like, check yourself. That's one thing about Thrawn. He is not afraid. He's not intimidated. He wasn't intimidated by Vader at all.
And even like think to the first time that he met Palpatine, and it's like you see characters usually when they're in front of Palpatine, especially Imperial Era Palpatine, where his skin's all fucked up. Like that man is scary. Thrawn kind of just walks in and literally mentions Anakin by name. Like it's literally he doesn't give no fucks.
Even seeing that picture of him with Palpatine, I was literally thinking like, oh god, I can't imagine like meeting him and just being like, hey, I know you're General Skywalker, like what's up buddy? Like no, I'd be terrified.
Like that's
he's
talk
scary.
that gets people killed in Star Wars. Like
yeah.
Crazy. When Thrawn first meets Palpatine, Eli's with him, and Eli's like, I'm about to piss my pants. But Thrawn is like Thrawn's talking to the Emperor like, oh, by the way, I serve the Ascendancy and not you, so maybe you should check yourself. And Palpatine's sort of thinking, he's like, well, I need this asset, but if his loyalties are divided, then he's no servant at all. So Palpatine's MO is trying to keep Thrawn on a leash, trying to keep him his servant as opposed to a servant of the Ascendancy. I believe Thrawn has a line that's like, I'm from the unknown region, which you're trying to explore right now. I know more than you about the unknown region. You couldn't even dream of the threats out there. Your precious little empire doesn't stand a chance against these Grisks. So you need me more than I need you. Which, yeah, Palpatine could have killed him right then and there. Thrawn, he is a warrior. He is a warrior, not only by code, but by presence. Like he's a badass. What can I say?
I mean, that's so right though, because Palpatine, all he wants is to find the secrets, and I guess as we found out, like there was something calling to him from the unknown regions. So of course when he's like, oh, here's some guy that can help me get to what I want, like I need him, which Palpatine doesn't need a lot of people, but that also speaks to Thrawn and his importance in all of it.
And I feel like this is touched on like towards the beginning of the first novel, but like when they all find him on the planet that they find him on in exile, first of all, Thrawn like fucks them all up, right? And then he finally comes out. They're like, who is this person destroying all of our shit? So that's
he
really
sneaks onto their ship,
right,
by stealing stormtrooper armor.
Yeah, iconic. But then even those people,
Ezra Bridger reference. Hello, best friends.
Period. But like people have like vaguely heard stories about the Chiss, like they're legendary. Like how I feel like the way they thought of the Chiss is kind of how we view like cryptids, like Bigfoot and shit, where you're like they're just these mystical, like they're big and strong and scary. So like he already has that going for him too, where like people are first already like just like wary of him because, you know, space racism. And then there's like, oh, this person could like, we have no idea. Here's everything we've heard. And Thrawn like finds that really funny. He's like, y'all are silly. That's really sweet. But so like, there's that. So I think Palpatine also has like that in his head. It's like, oh, I've heard the Chiss are these great like war people. If I can get one of them on my side, then like even better. So it's just, I really like that.
In this book, we see a lot of that, of Thrawn making use of the anonymity and the mystery, because like we were talking about earlier, the kids at the academy, they don't know that Thrawn's been a warrior for 40 years, and so he doesn't let them know. They get attacked and Eli's like, oh, poor Thrawn, he doesn't know how to fight. And then Thrawn's like whipping out these moves Eli's never even seen before. He's like, whoa, you're not who I thought you were. And there's also Thrawn automatically gets a promotion, but he doesn't wear his rank plaque because he doesn't want the other kids to treat him differently. So he lets them fall into his trap, and then he whips out his rank plaque and is like, busted, I'm snitching on you for being racist to me. Did I mention I actually am important?
As
so
he should.
Clever about that. Like, never like show them your hand, like never give yourself away.
Ooh, imagine him and Lando like playing sabacc or some shit together. Who would really win?
I don't know about sabacc, but Thras did teach him how to play, which is like the equivalent of chess. So he's big on board games. I don't know
That
about
tracks.
cards.
That tracks.
Yeah.
He'd be ready to play. Oh God, what's that one war game?
Risk?
It's like a Risk.
Thrawn would
Fucking
kill it at
Risk. Oh my God, yes he would.
On to one of my favorite things to talk about: Thrawn alliances.
Crop tops.
Crop tops, yes. When Thrawn and Anakin are on Batuu, Thrawn comes out in like a crop top, and Anakin's like, "Where did you get that?" And Thrawn's like, "I made it out of like this paracord or whatever." So when we get that comic, you know what page I'm flipping to first.
Crop top Thrawn.
Real.
The throp top.
Drop top.
I love that.
This book, similarly to a lot of the other ones, are split between two timelines. The Memories chapters, which are Thrawn and Anakin. This takes place during Chaos Rising, the first Ascendancy book. So Thrawn's still quite young. He's in his 20s, and Anakin is still in his like late teen. He's like 19. How old he was when he was Ahsoka's master? Because he was already Ahsoka's
This is like
Ahsoka's
2021.
master. Okay, so he was in his early 20s, and Thrawn was in his mid to late 20s. Crazy book. Oh my gosh, because the current timeline is Thrawn and Vader, and they butt heads. You guys know what Vader's like. You guys know what the ego of Anakin Skywalker is like. Immovable object, unstoppable force. Like,
Oof.
you have this force-sensitive, emotionally immature, lightsaber-wielding Darth Vader, Sith Lord. And then you have Thrawn, this Grand Admiral with so many decades of military experience and galactic knowledge under his belt. And putting the two of them together and being like, play nice, it just doesn't work.
Chaos.
Because Thrawn loves letting people know what he knows. He's a little bit of a show-off, not in an egotistical way, just in a, I know something you don't. I know something you will never know. Because Thrawn is like, did I ever tell you about my time on Batuu with my dearest friend, Anakin Skywalker?
Oh,
You
no.
remind me of him in a way. It's almost like, no, I
Shady
can't say it
bitch.
unless they're like, Thrawn is just pushing buttons, just letting Vader know, I know who Anakin is, and I know he's you. I've pieced together the puzzle. I'm a good little boy. I figured out the clues. Like,
I'm obsessed.
Where's my reward?
I'm obsessed. And at the time, too, I guess Vader's in his whole, like, I killed Anakin Skywalker.
Yes,
and Thrawn's
exactly.
just like, actually, you are him, and I know.
He's like, hee hee, do you remember my crop top? I used to be so fit back in the day.
And mind you, this is speak that would get people killed. Like in the Vader comics,
Yeah.
if someone even Anakin Skywalker, boop, bye.
Choke.
You're in the trash with Anakin.
Choke,
There's
stab.
so many moments where Vader is like, I'm going to choke him out. I'm going to choke him out. And then Thrawn's over here like skipping around him like, I've already thought of 3 different ways to kill you, by the way. Like, okay, 3? Was that necessary?
Love that.
That was an interesting challenge that Timothy Zahn ran into when writing this book, because how are you going to create an enemy that has that can beat someone who has the Force? This
Yeah.
capability of seeing what's about to happen before it actually does. So he invents this bug species, which is what Anakin and Thrawn run into on Batuu. And first of all, getting surrounded like a hive, as a claustrophobic person myself, I cannot imagine. But they have this like ability. I'm gonna struggle to put it into words, but it's almost like freeze tag to me. Reading that chapter, I'm like, they're playing freeze tag with these bugs, because the bugs kind of like make them stay, like solidify them almost.
Ooh.
So yeah, they definitely have their hands full on Batuu. Anakin is out there to try and find Padme, because Padme's gone missing, trying to find her friend. I believe it's one of her handmaidens as well. I could be getting that wrong, but Thrawn is out there because he's doing his expansionary thing. He actually, you don't learn this until you read Chaos Rising, he had his little Skywalker with him in the car. Like, talk about baby on board. When I learned that, I was like, you mean there was a child in his ship just with a coloring book while he was in prison with Anakin? He and Anakin get arrested, and little Sherry's just in the car with her juice box, like, when's Dad getting home?
Poor little Sherry.
Sherry. It is funny though, because Sherry is like, are you sure you can take me, just the two of us? I feel like that's not allowed. I need to have my babysitter, my government mandated babysitter with me. And Thrawn's like, don't worry about it. And Sherry's like, what do you mean by that? We're gonna get in trouble. And he says, you won't, but I will. And that's okay. So, I mean, at least he owns it. And Sherry asks, she says, I do have one favor. If I go with you, can you get me art supplies? And Thrawn literally pulls out like paper and markers, and he's like, I already have them for you. Which is like, that's so sweet. Like, you don't see hardcore villains doing stuff like that.
No, not at all.
Absolutely not. He also teaches her how to fly.
Oh.
Which might be child endangerment, but we won't argue about that.
I mean, they do it in Young Jedi Adventures, so...
I like to think that she's a pilot now. We don't know what she is. She hasn't grown up yet, but I like to think in the current timeline, like the Mando timeline, I'd like to think she's a pilot because he taught her. But go ahead.
My question is, why didn't he just send her to, like, Disney's California Adventure? I mean, it's in the same area.
Doesn't that park have the Vader meet and greet though? That would get a little, with the timelines, that might get a little confusing.
Could you imagine if they dressed up some little blue girl to walk around Batu? Like, oh my god, it's Sherry.
I wish,
character,
because then I'd actually have a chance of meeting her, because like Mando and all the other characters get fucking sworn and no one would know who she is, and I'd be like, oh my god, it's Sherry! Like,
it's Glup Shido.
Yeah, exactly.
Blue face paint and an apple juice box and some colored pens. You're good to go. Sherry cosplay.
Next Disney bound set.
Yes.
Oh my god.
In a sick little funny twisted mirror of Thrawn being like, hey Vader, I know who you are, Thrawn immediately figures out that Anakin's looking for his partner. He's like, oh, so what's she like? And Anakin's like, I'm a Jedi, I can't have attachments. And Thrawn's like, okay, I don't know what a Jedi is, but what's your girlfriend like? Let's go find her. And Thrawn and Anakin,
oh my god,
they work together to go save Padme. But it's so funny that like he's just able to read him like an open book, and that pisses Vader off to no end.
Well, and he's so clueless too, like, because he doesn't know what a Jedi is, and you know that just has to like push Anakin's buttons, and then flipping back and forth between him pushing Vader's buttons. This sounds like some drama that I would be so into.
There's a very funny scene where Thrawn first introduces himself as like, you know, I'm this great warrior of the Chiss expansionary defense fleet, like, who are you? And Anakin's trying to say his name and he just butchers it every time. He's like, Mathron Arodo, Mathron Nuru Odo.
Me.
Like,
and
me
earlier
Thrawn's
in this
just like,
in this podcast.
Let's just stick to Thrawn. I think you can handle that. And Anakin just gets so offended that this random alien's like talking down to him.
Love that.
This book, there's a plot line where Thrawn saves a ship, and on the ship is a bunch of captive Skywalker girls.
Oh.
And, you know, Vader's like, this is so weird. They're trafficking these little girls. And Thrawn's like, the secrets of the Chiss Ascendancy, the navigators, like, they can't know. Because all of that stuff is like secrets of the Chiss. Like Chelsea mentioned, they're an unknown species. Like, that protects them. The fact that no one knows who they are. They don't mess with people unless you mess with them first.
And then they're going to fuck you up.
Yes, exactly. But it's such a great little moment that, like, Vader sees Thrawn with all these little girls, and he's like, I didn't know you were capable of having emotions. Like, what are you talking about?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm very excited for this comic to come out soon.
Yes.
It
That was
only took
such like
6
good
years.
timing. I know. But it was good timing because it got announced right before we did this podcast. So
Yes.
Oh my
And now I
god.
get to talk about it.
Yes.
So perfect.
I have a question for you, MJ, because I feel like we put out the poll, and I definitely should have looked at the results before, like, we hopped on here. But I remember, like, I can't remember if it was in book club or something, but people are talking about it, and I feel like a lot of people say this is their least favorite one, but this is my favorite. But you're more in the
Really?
Chiss Twitter culture, so is that the perception in there, or is that just like the outside Chiss Twitter perception?
I feel like it depends on what you're looking for personally in a story, because this has so much adventure and so many lighthearted laughs and just quality storytelling, and also the creativity. Like I was talking about the villains, like you have to be able to come up with something that can stump both a mastermind and a very powerful Jedi slash Sith. So I feel like this is a great book. I don't know why it would be anyone's least favorite. I know most of the people whose favorite it is, a lot of them were Anakin fans first and then got into Thrawn. Whereas I was a Thrawn fan first and then got into, like, I like the ones that focus mainly on Thrawn. Duh.
Yeah.
But
Really? You?
I know people also get weird about like the Galaxy's Edge tie-ins. I mean, I know we joked about it, but I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I don't think Timothy Zahn is the type of author to be like, yeah, I'm gonna write a Disney advertisement for them. Like, there's clearly heart in the book. There's, like MJ mentioned, there's clearly great adventures, and I don't know. I don't really mind it. Like, I love Princess and the Scoundrel. I absolutely hate the idea of the Galactic Star Cruiser. R.I.P. Rest in piss. But but I like it in the book. So I feel like I feel the same with this. Like, it's just.
I mean, I made the joke earlier, but talking about this book, I'm like, this actually sounds really fun. Like, it doesn't, even though it's like on Batu, like the story, the adventure, like you said, the back and forth. I was a little nervous because with Shadows of the Sith, I am struggling with going around so many different places, but I think I could handle this back and forth.
I think when I first started reading Timothy Zahn's books, I was worried because they are adult novels, but because there's so many back and forth between memories in the present timeline and memories in the present timeline, he does such a good job at differentiating characters and establishing who's telling the story. That makes it so much easier to follow. And like you said, jumping from planet to planet, we're really only sticking to a core storyline here on Batu or on the Chimera. So that's interesting. My last point. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel a little bit called out because if you're saying Shadows of the Sith is an adult novel, this just explains that I just started reading Star Wars books and books in general last year. So maybe I just haven't graduated to adult books yet.
It's
and that's why I struggle.
It's okay. You can take your time. And also, there's so many good resources like Wikipedia, podcasts. Check out my podcast that I've been on, or just reaching out on Twitter. I'm always happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
I always say Star Wars YouTubers sponsored by Wikipedia, like we all use it.
Yes.
All right. My last point for alliances is that, like I mentioned earlier, the Chiss navigators are called Skywalkers. And what's the last name of this general that Thrawn suddenly bumps into? When he introduces himself as General Anakin Skywalker, the gears in Thrawn's head are turning immediately. Like, is this guy the key to figuring out the Skywalker mystery? Like, what happens to the girls when they become teenagers, stuff like that. So I feel like while people recognize that Thrawn was with the Empire, they don't really recognize that he's still actively working for the Chiss. Everything he does, the sole purpose of his existence is for the Chiss. He's always trying to learn more and be able to relay information to help his people.
Right. And we never learn what the connection is, do we? or even if there is a connection.
Not yet.
Well, I mean, he is Force sensitive, and they obviously have third sight, which is equivalent to the Force, but we don't know much more beyond that. It's one of the Chiss' greatest mysteries, you know? He's like Bigfoot, like Chelsea said.
Oh, he's like the Yoda species. They're like the Yoda species of the Chiss.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I wonder, do we know if that's something that, like, Timothy Zahn doesn't want to explain? Or could it be something that we could see in the future? We just don't know. Or has he been like, no, I don't want to explain the mystery. Like, that's going to be a mystery.
Everything is fair game with Zahn. It's just a matter of he doesn't write things that he doesn't have a need for yet. Because if he goes on down the line and retroactively is like, oh, I should have put a water planet there when I instead put a fire planet or stuff like that, then he can't change it. He wants all of his writing to be consistent, especially when you have like a dozen Legends and canon novels and you want them all to tie together. There's a lot he has to keep straight. His mind is so powerful. I was going to say, though, that's like why Thrawn's parents aren't explored. Because we don't know anything about Thrawn's parents because he hasn't had the need to write them yet. That's not saying we'll never learn about them. It's just not yet.
Interesting. I see. If it was me and I was writing these many books and needed everything to connect, I'd be the meme with the like board with all the things connected and the lines.
Yes.
Like that'd be me trying to keep my like story universe connected properly without.
That's just people trying to read
or...
these books.
That was me trying to make this PowerPoint. Does anyone have any more questions about alliances before I move on to treason?
I had one question. I'm sorry if this is a dumb question or you already
No
explained
questions
it.
are dumb.
So you said that like Thrawn, he didn't speak Galactic Basic when he was like brought into the Empire. So how did Anakin and Thrawn communicate?
Oh, they spoke in a trade language.
Okay.
Is it Cybisti, or is that what him and Eli speak, or is it the same?
Eli and Thrawn speak Cybisti. I think they might have spoken like Tarj or something, but it was probably Cybisti. That's kind of like the go-to.
I don't know why that randomly just popped into my brain.
You remember more. You're studying, like, you're ready.
Because you've read the book, Chelsea, unlike us. I have one more question, too.
Oh, go ahead.
Where's the crop top photo?
January.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There's
Mark
no
your calendars. January,
all right.
It's coming.
Gotta wait for the comic.
All right.
Oh,
My
there she is, serving
book,
cunt.
My favorite book of all 9. I love this book. When I told Timothy Zahn this was my favorite, he looked me dead in the eyes and said, because of Eli Vanto. Like, you didn't have to call me out like that, but he is my best boy. He's my number 1 boy. So it's always good to see a familiar face because reading Alliances, I feel like that's why it was my least favorite. No Eli. We need more. Like, I missed him. Like, 300, 400 pages without him. That's 300, 400 too many. Like, we should not have a single page without him. But as I said earlier, Thrawn sends Eli to the Chiss Ascendancy, and he's working, crunching the numbers, feeling like life is pointless. Like, why am I staring at numbers in this alien ship all day? I can't wait to see my best friend Thrawn. Haven't seen my best friend Thrawn in 6 months now. I'm going to go see my friend Thrawn with Arlani. They meet, and Thrawn hits him with the, "Good day, Lieutenant Vanto."
Oh.
Broke Eli's little heart. A case that doesn't sit right with me. To this day. To this day. So that's what the GDLV stands for, Good Day, Lieutenant Vanto. It will traumatize any Chiss Twitter member when they hear those words.
He was just trying to play it cool in front of everyone else, because like if he just jumped his bones like he really wanted to, people would probably be like, whoa. So he was just trying to keep it professional, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, either that...
Sorry. We all got our own theory about what happened, apparently. You go first, Scotty. I want to hear your theory.
I was just going to say, at that point, it honestly just sounds like he was putting on a straight act because, like, he'd been with the Empire too long. They're fascists. They probably hate gay people. They're xenophobic. Like, so I imagine that's just That's how he is now. He's trying to. It's self-hatred. No, I'm
Internalized
homophobia. There we go. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Austin?
I've seen people on Chiss Twitter say that it's because his stomach hurt. He has stomach issues.
His stomach hurt, and he wasn't being very brave about it.
I can't believe I didn't address that, but when Thras and Thrawn went to the bistros, they would eat cheese triangles.
Ooh, that'd make my tummy hurt.
Just straight up cheese, just blocks of cheese. So that's kind of where the IBS lore. Not many real fans know that Thrawn has IBS and has to take Lactaid.
He's just like me. Oh my god.
There were those large crates in the Struck live action show at the end of the finale, and Thrawn has all of those crates, and everyone on Twitter was like, "Ooh, what's in those?" And I was like, "Lactaid." Like,
oh, this is hilarious.
Bro has been in exile. I can't even imagine how his GI tract is doing. Like, no wonder why he's so angry now.
Y'all don't even understand. This hits so close to home because
I really resonate with his character.
Lactaid doesn't even work for me anymore, and now I'm just vegan. Ugh.
The main plot line for this book, though, I titled it Funding Feud because, you know, the Empire's tight on money. This rebellion thing they're working on, not working out great for us at the Empire. So, money's tight. I can only fund one project. Okay, kids, Thrawn, Krennic, which one of you is it going to be? Because neither of you are my favorite. We all know that's my son, Vader. So which one of my second or third favorite sons is it going to be? So, Krennic is obviously working on the Death Star, Project Stardust. We've got a nice little Rogue One tie-in. And then Thrawn, a little Rebels tie-in, has those beautiful TIE Defenders. Spoiler alert, the TIE Defenders don't get funded.
Justice for the TIE Defenders.
Krennic sabotages Thrawn. He sends a little character who I love. He is also like a hater. His name is Briarly Ronan. Briarly is his first name. Let that sink in. Briarly Ronan.
I'd be a hater too if that were my name.
Exactly.
There's some Christian Girl Autumn Pumpkin Spice Mom like child name.
Wait, no, okay, hold on.
L-E-I-G-H.
Yeah.
But hold on, and aside on the Christian Girl Autumn thing, the woman like who's in the original meme, she's actually iconic. Like she's donates to like trans communities and stuff, and she's actually an amazing person. So and she just takes the meme in stride. Yeah, ally, exactly. So I just want to
honestly
tangent for that because she's iconic. Yeah. We love her.
Go look her up. Honestly, I knew about that too, and it's great. It's very surprising. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one.
Shout out her if she's getting her Thrawn fix from this.
Come on, Briarly.
So Briarly Ronan is Krennic's little lackey. I like to think of him as Krennic's #1 fanboy. He wears a cape, just like Krennic. Can you imagine if someone's following you around? I like to imagine that he vaguely looks like him too, like he's like cosplaying him. You're like, oh, there's Krennic. Oh, it's just Ronan. Never mind, guys. False alarm. But
fucking Briarly.
He has to go on Thrawn's ship, and he was sent to sabotage him. But trouble in space. Who's surprised? The Chiss are out there, and Thrawn's like, hey, Aralani, long time no see. And Aralani's like, I hate you. I'm so tired of your stuff. Like, do you know how many decades I've been cleaning up your stuff? Like, why are you here? And Thrawn and Aralani get to work together again, but Thrawn is on this deadline to try and prove himself to get his project funded. Obviously, things don't work out, but this is proof that his loyalty is still to the Chiss, not the Empire. And Palpatine, he's not too happy about this. When little Briarly Ronan snitches, and Emperor Palpatine figures out that Thrawn had Chiss on board his ship. Are you kidding me? Dude, day one I said you're not allowed to talk to them still. I thought, like, it's like talking to your ex. You can't do that. You're mine now. You belong to me. And so Palpatine, he says to Thrawn, he says, when you get back, we're going to have a little word. And by word, I'm going to kill you. Ooh. And Thrawn's like, retro, I may have girl bossed a little too close to the sun again. And luckily, timeline-wise, Thrawn is like, I'm gonna make one more stop before I go see Palpatine and get choked to death. Like, one last hurrah on Lothal. And what happens on this last hurrah on Lothal? Some space whales take him away for 10 years. So, sorry, Palpatine. Sorry, Palpatine, but maybe next time. Better luck next time.
Ooh, and when he comes back, Palpatine is presumed dead, so it's like a win-win.
Right.
Thrawn, he always lucks out. Like, for someone who breaks a lot of rules in good faith, he does get away with a lot because street smarts.
He's got lucky girl syndrome.
He does. And IBS.
Yet,
two syndromes.
Yet the lucky girl syndrome does not help the IBS, unfortunately. I love how you put did Ezra save Thrawn, because I'm like, no, I'm just like, maybe Ezra kind of did at least save his life in the
unintentionally, yeah.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
I think there's one more slide, and this is kind of what I touched on with Thrawn helping the Chiss even when he's an Imperial officer. Back to that quote that I put in earlier, my job, the sole reason for my existence is to defend the Chiss Ascendancy. But this one, from this book, Aralani asks him, not even your emperor? And Thrawn says, he commands only the loyalty of my actions, not the loyalty of my heart and mind. The deepest secrets of the Chiss will always remain secrets.
Aww.
Is this your villain? Is this your villain? I don't think so. What do you guys think?
It's so
Is this
tough.
Long Live the Empire right here? Because I don't think so. I feel like after hearing all this, like, hearing the line "Long Live the Empire" is a lot more jarring now. I'm not gonna lie.
The way I kind of read it, though, I almost read it as sarcasm. Like,
maybe we'll talk about it another day, but
maybe
we can rationalize it with the fact that he doesn't know the Emperor's gone yet, so he's kind of still. I gotta play it cool so they don't skin me alive. So there's one way to rationalize it.
See?
Okay.
I'm not a hater. I just need to do backflips to make it all make sense.
Well, you always tell me that Timothy's on no matter what happens, he will know what to do. Like
I trust him. You know how people are like, I trust Dave Filoni, it's like on t-shirts? That's me with him. I trust him to fix anything because like in Rebels, in the finale, we see Thrawn bombarding the Lothal buildings, and a lot of people, they love to use that argument. Why is he shooting in Lothal if he values lives, if all lives are sacred? First of all, he gave them the opportunity to surrender. That's like the first thing he asks is for Ezra to come on board, and he won't. So then he has to up the ante. It's like layers. It's like, this is plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. So it kind of like progresses, gets a little more intense, but Thrawn would never immediately kill someone first. That's not him. That's not who he is. And I do believe he thinks life is sacred. And also another thing that Tim said is you notice that they show the people running from the buildings. He's not shooting at the people. You see them run away. This is a kid's cartoon still, so you can't prove that he killed anybody.
Honestly, I don't remember when we were having this conversation, but it's funny that your rationalization, MJ, kind of plays into what I had said one time we were talking about Thrawn's allegiance. And I was like, maybe we're actually just seeing Thrawn from the Rebels' eyes, and we're not seeing Thrawn's inner workings and why he's doing these things. Because I remember one of the things I brought up is like maybe he had to do some of those actions to continue kind of playing into his surroundings that he. Not like, I mean, I guess, yeah, it's like he had to put on a show, because if he didn't start shooting at things, they'd be like, Thrawn, these people aren't listening to you, and they're trying to take our shit down, like, are you gonna do anything about it? So...
everything comes back to the dramatics that his big brother taught him. You gotta put on a show. You have to play the part for your survival. He has Palpatine breathing down his neck, watching his every move, saying, are you really loyal to me? because I don't think you are. I'm going to send these
Yeah.
people to make sure you are. And if not, we're going to have some problems. So Thrawn really has to play the part. Like I mentioned earlier, he has to take part in this regime that actively oppresses him in order to survive. And like you said as well, this is from the rebels' point of view. We don't know his thought process. You can't prove that he had malicious intentions. And if you read these canon novels, there's not a malicious intention in sight. He's doing what he has to. What he believes will protect his people. That's the only reason why he does anything. He doesn't have much personality outside of the military. That's all he knows. That's all he's ever known.
Yeah.
Pour one out for Thras.
Throw that Thras back.
Do you have any questions? Any thoughts?
I don't know if I feel like an expert now, but I feel like I would need to read the books. Like, I'd have to get into everything to really understand. But I do feel like I have a much better understanding of Thrawn as a person, which I'd like to think is kind of the big thing that people like you had said, MJ, like my friend Joey had said, like, Thrawn's not a bad person. He's not a villain. And I was always like, well, he's kind of portrayed as one. But I'm like, but in the books, and when we actually understand like his inner workings and what's in his head, makes me understand him so much more. And it almost feels like a disservice to yourself as a Star Wars fan, if you like Thrawn, to not go and read these books to fully understand him.
Amen.
Yeah.
I encourage everyone listening to go read them if you haven't already. And if you have, reread them. Join the fight. Join the fight on Thrawn mischaracterizations.
Put your blueberry emoji in your Twitter bio and join the fight.
For the Ascendancy.
Yes. Well, Scotty, I know you're super into the lore of Star Wars, and you kind of talk about like being afraid, like, oh, what if I don't like the Chiss stuff? So, 2 hours in, what do you think?
So it's kind of funny because in explaining the way like the Chiss government works and like the ruling families and whatnot, we kind of talked about this off air, how you mentioned it was similar to more like Star Trek-y than Star Wars. And to me, it also feels very fantasy, just with like ruling families. And it's more of like, instead of a government that's controlling everything, it's like, I know they're not portrayed necessarily in monarchs, or that's not the way like it seemed, but it reminds me, I don't want to compare it to Game of Thrones, but it's kind of giving a little Game of Thrones, which I love.
Houses, families, the feuds between families. It's all very high fantasy.
And I love fantasy, which is why I think I'm more into like Star Wars than Star Trek, because I feel like that's more sci-fi, Star Wars more fantasy. So needless to say, you did your job. You did it great, MJ. Yes. I might have to read a Thrawn book because I'm definitely interested, and I was already like, I'm gonna end up going and looking up shit about the Chiss like later this evening or something, because I'm into it. I'm drinking the blue Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
I was sipping on the blue Gatorade this whole time. One thing that I like one of my favorite things about Star Wars is that it's so big that something like this can exist, where this could be a franchise on its own. The Thrawn Ascendancy and everything, it could be its own whole thing, just that by itself. But the fact that Timothy Zahn's able to come in and build his own world, basically, like own politics, own government, own characters, everything, and it still connect to the larger galaxy to the point where it's now like super important to the future of, you know, everything going on with the connected universe they're building in the TV shows. I think that that's just really cool, and it really speaks to how great Star Wars is and why Star Wars really can be for everyone, because something like this, you know, we talked about this a bit earlier, but Thrawn really connects everybody together, because it's like a lot of minorities love Thrawn and these books and can kind of see themselves in him, or, you know, neurodivergent people. But on the other side of things, we also share a fandom space with these dude bros, Joe Schmo, as we called him in last episode. And Joe Schmo can love Thrawn too, you know, maybe for the wrong reasons. But at the end of the day, the love of Thrawn is something that I feel like a lot of Star Wars fans can... it's one of the things that everybody can bring Star Wars fans together. There's like the few things, like John Williams is another one. Like all Star Wars fans can agree John Williams is great. I feel like all Star Wars fans can agree Grand Admiral Thrawn is great, one way or another.
He's the it girl of Star Wars.
Oh,
Yeah.
come on,
Yes.
Thrawn. I mean, he's got 6 canon books and 4 Legends books.
More than that.
There's like,
So, like,
2 different trilogies
There's a
and then the
trilogy.
duology.
There's a duology, and then there's standalones like Outbound Flight.
see, so there's plenty of things to find to like about Thrawn for everybody. Like,
Did I say
there's enough.
Outbound Flight is the duology with Survivor's Quest. No, wait. There's so much. There's so many Legends books. This isn't about Legends. Don't come at me for not knowing the title of every Legends book. Okay, my brain is fried from talking about canon for 2 hours. I need to like de-stress, decompress.
Well, speaking of canon, MJ, I think I speak for a lot of people watching this, listening to this. Are you able to give us a little bit of hope that there will be more canon Thrawn books?
I wish I could. And as in the dark of everyone else, I pray to Lucasfilm Publishing every night that they pick up the phone and let Timothy Zahn write more books. I will say, and disclaimer, I do not speak for Timothy Zahn when I say, Lucasfilm Publishing, if you're listening, you would be fools not to let him write more. Give him another trilogy. Give him 2 more trilogies. Let him write every book from now on. Like,
I mean,
Well, he's interested, right?
oh, absolutely. He's just waiting for the call.
in world building alone, like I really feel like he could slay anything probably in the universe.
I want Ezra and Thrawn together. I want what they were up to. I want that in the Thrawn book.
Would you like me to describe some of the ideas that he has for future novels that he's talked about
Yeah,
publicly?
let's do it. Let's hear it.
There's, I think the most popular one is called the Donut Thrawn book. And so this is basically if Lucasfilm says, hey, you can write more books, but you can't write Thrawn because we're not quite done with him yet. And we don't want anything to not be the same. So Tim's solution to this is to write a book without Thrawn. Aralani, Eli Vanto, Samacro, Thalia, Sherry, all of these people that are grown up now. Ronan, Briarly, who, by the way, spoiler alert, gets sent to the Chiss Ascendancy. All of those characters, General Bakif, everyone we know and love, searching for Thrawn for those 9 years. Why haven't the Chiss found him yet? What are they up to? Has a civil war broken out? Because we haven't seen the Ascendancy in a long time. What has the Ascendancy been up to while Thrawn's been in the Empire? Because it's been decades. So there's so much that he can explore without Thrawn, but then there's also stuff he can explore with Thrawn, which I'm praying they let him write Thrawn again. Like I said, they would be fools not to. But Thrawn and Ezra team up. They're stranded on Peridia. They need to survive. They need to set aside their differences purely for survival. And maybe Ezra will realize, hey, we're not so different after all. I do everything I do for my family on Lothal. You do everything you do for your family back in the Ascendancy. We're actually very similar characters, motivationally speaking. So I think that would be really interesting. And I think it would definitely change a lot of people's perspectives on Thrawn to see him work with a character like Ezra. And also, people saying that would be so out of character for Ezra considering what Thrawn did to Lothal. Ezra befriended Maul. Thrawn and Maul? Maul is 10 times worse than Thrawn. Thrawn loves kids. Thrawn would make an excellent parental figure. I would die on that hill. But, like, he and Ezra, they would get along great eventually, after they set their differences aside.
For sure. I've thought the same exact thing. Like, before when we were speculating about the series, like, that we just saw that we're not talking about, like, I imagined that there could have been a team up there where they were working together. I can't imagine either of them would be so stubborn and not think, as you've mentioned, and not to be punny, but for the greater good, to work together because they're stranded. What else are they going to do?
Right. There's no other choice. And I don't know, even if you don't think that it would be in character for Ezra, Thrawn's a mastermind. I feel like it wouldn't be hard for him to convince Ezra, not in like a manipulation way, but like
make it make sense.
Right.
Also,
like
That man loves adopting kids. One thing he will do is take care of a kid or put them into some sort of situation where they can learn and grow as a person.
Yeah. Apparently Thrawn's a night sister, according to some theorists. There goes his backstory.
Oh my god. I honestly, for somebody who hasn't read any of the books, I'd be interested in either. And just from what you've talked about today, just a book on the Chiss Ascendancy. As I keep mentioning, it's a testament to Timothy Zahn as a writer, like, and just as a creative. I feel like he's established all these characters, like you said, that so many people know and love, to where there could just be a book about them with no Thrawn at all, and it would still be entertaining, and there's so much that he could talk about. But then also, for people who are just more into canon Thrawn, you've got the Thrawn and Ezra story, which is also super compelling because there's so much you can tell there.
Let him write both.
Honest.
Eli Vanto trilogy.
Oh my god, please!
I've said that to his face. Tons of people have. If he hasn't gotten the hint by now, I don't know what to say.
We need it.
Does he ship Eli and Thrawn?
I don't know, because I think Eli's a teenager when they meet.
Oh, yeah, and Thrawn's like an old adult.
Yeah, so...
Okay,
a little delusional for that one.
We'll cut that part out.
to be fair, the Timelines book, they did not consult him on that. So for all we know, those ages aren't canon in the books necessarily. It's canon to Star Wars, but this is the Ascendancy. Like, we decide the rules. We don't need other people at Lucasfilm telling us what's real.
Yeah, and that book already has a lot of inaccuracies. The show that just came out retconned plenty of stuff from that book. So, like, when the Rebels epilogue takes place.
We know they don't like to read books there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, it don't matter. Fuck that book. No, I'm just kidding. A lot of people work really hard on that book. We appreciate you all. We love you here at This is the Wayseekers LLC.
We love Lucasfilm Publishing.
Austin SWE does not speak for the Wayseekers podcast. That is a separate thought to the SWE brand that we're not a part of.
And if anyone from Lucasfilm Publishing is listening to this right now, I'm gonna need an ARC for whatever Thrawn books are released next.
Yes.
I'm the go-to girl. What can I say?
We support it.
Yes. Well, this has been amazing. MJ, thank you so much for coming on. And doing this
thank you
amazing
for
PowerPoint.
having me.
No, this was good. I think you succeeded. Do you feel like you succeeded? I feel converted.
You feel converted? Yeah. Then my work here is done. If I can convert one person to recognizing that Thrawn is not a V word, but instead an antagonist at best, if he's morally good, then my work here's done. I've done what I set out to do.
I mean, before I kept tweeting, I'm ready to ascend, and I feel like I have ascended.
Yes.
I'm sure there will be people in the comments like, fascist apologist.
We don't give a fuck.
Everyone's allowed to have one quote-unquote toxic fave. Like, come on, y'all. We obviously would not like...
And he's not even that toxic.
Right.
Did you listen to what I said? Media illiteracy.
For real. No, but this has been great. Like, it really makes me want to go back and reread all of the books because, like you said, you really only focused on Thrawn specifically. But there's so much more, like, richness. Like you said, all the B plots about, like, the subterfuge within the Chiss Ascendancy and, like, the politics. I remember being like, holy shit, like, reading that. So, like, definitely
recommend. and Zastalmu, if you listening at home know about them, they go through a nasty divorce. It's crazy. The two of them... The two guys that were plotting on Thrawn's downfall, and then at the end, Zastalmu's like, wait, maybe he's onto something, and Thurfian's like, I don't even know who you are anymore.
Right.
Yes.
There's so much that we couldn't cover in a 2-hour PowerPoint. Like, please, I implore you, get on Barnes & Noble right now, give Timothy Zahn all your money. He has a cat to feed. Like, we gotta get kibble in the bowl. Come on, people. This is not sponsored.
Not sponsored, but all 6 canon books are available where books are sold. And you can also follow MJ at Chimera Chat on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Is there any more?
Tumblr.
Yeah, and those are the places you can keep up with MJ when she's not doing PowerPoint presentations. But her entire personality is Thrawn, and you will see that on all social media platforms. You can follow wayseekerspod on Instagram and Twitter. And you can follow Scotty, Chelsea, and I. Our social medias will be in the descriptions wherever you're listening. This has been another wonderful episode of This Is the Wayseekers. We'll see you next time with more. May the Force be with you always. Bye.